The moment your attention was drawn to these words, something invisible began to move. You might think you were driven by simple curiosity, but your soul knows it was not a coincidence. Because this message is not meant for everyone. It appears only to those who are ready. And if you are here, something within you has already begun to remember. You will notice it today because in the next few moments, you are not just going to hear about the secret of Thoth, you are going to feel it happening inside you. Something real. Something that activates a forgotten frequency. The very same one that allows you to see beyond matter. Before we continue, mentally affirm to yourself, I felt the call. This phrase is a vibrational key, and everyone who recognizes it strengthens the field this message carries. What you are about to experience here is not a pretty theory or a mystical ritual. It is a revelation that shifts your perception because Thoth did not leave a manual. He left a code. And that code is revealing itself now, but only to those who stay until the end. So take a deep breath. Feel what is already beginning to move within you. Because in the next few seconds, you will cross the line that separates the physical world from the invisible reality that has always been guiding you from behind the veil. The true light is not seen with the eyes, but is recognized with the awakened spirit. When we speak of Thoth, we are not speaking of a figure lost in the myths of the past. What we call a god was, in fact, a consciousness. An intelligence that manifested in different eras, in different cultures, but always with the same purpose, to preserve the truth that cannot be erased. In ancient Egypt, he was given the image of a being with the head of an ibis, because the ibis is a bird that walks between worlds, the earth and the sky, the mud and the light. And Thoth is precisely that, a messenger between dimensions, a coder of the invisible. But to limit Thoth to a character from mythology is to misunderstand his essence. He was never just a deity to be worshipped. He was, and still is, a guardian of vibrational portals. His presence moves through time because it is not bound by time. It vibrates in the spaces between the visible and the invisible, in the fragments of wisdom that resisted being forgotten. And that is why you begin to feel his presence, even if you have never heard his name before. Have you ever wondered why certain ancient symbols still touch you in a way that is hard to explain? Or why names like Hermes, Jehuti, and Enoch feel strangely familiar, even if you have never studied anything about them? It is because Thoth does not act through the mind. He vibrates through ancestral memory. He speaks to the part of you that already knows but has been silenced. In ancient Egypt, he was called Jehuti, and he was described as the one who wrote destinies, who calculated celestial cycles, who measured time with divine precision. But what he truly measured was not chronological time. He measured the hidden rhythms of the soul. Every heartbeat, every breath, every subtle choice was like a note in an invisible score that Thoth could read. And those who invoked him did so not to ask for miracles, but to remember the lost harmony. Thoth is directly connected to the origin of the Hermetic teachings. He is pointed to as the mind behind the emerald tablet of short text, yet charged with a vibrational density capable of altering the consciousness of anyone who contemplates it with presence. He did not write with mere words, he wrote with vibration. Every letter, every line carried a living geometry. It was as if the words were maps to access more subtle levels of reality. And this is not a metaphor. Many accounts throughout history confirm that by simply meditating on the Hermetic principles, real changes begin to happen in a person's life. But what makes Thoth so special is not what he said, but how he taught. He did not shout. He did not perform theatrical miracles. He whispered. He left clues, like someone planting a riddle, hoping that only the attentive would notice. He knew that true awakening does not happen by force, but through recognition. And for this reason, everything he left behind was in the form of a key, a code, waiting for someone with the right vibration to activate it. And now, perhaps for the first time, you are feeling that vibration. This is not just any feeling, it is something deeper, as if something inside you is being rearranged. A wordless remembrance, a memory of a wisdom you have touched in another time. Because Thoth is a mirror for your highest consciousness. He does not give you answers. He shows you the way back to the right questions. His role was never to create followers, it was to create seekers, and that is why he is still alive. Not in physical temples, but in the subtle spaces between each conscious thought. When you are silent, he appears. When you observe, he speaks. When you align with truth, he recognizes you. But all of this was hidden, distorted, rewritten. And the reasons for this are as old as the very system of control that keeps humanity imprisoned. And that is exactly where we are going now. What was hidden from humanity, and why did no one want you to find out? When the presence of Thoth still vibrated in the temples and in the bodies of the initiates, the teachings were passed from soul to soul, from breath to breath. There were no books, no scattered words on paper. There was vibration. Knowledge was transmitted like an invisible, silent fire that only ignited where there was enough dry wood to burn. But over time, this fire began to make people uncomfortable. Not because it was dangerous, but because it brought freedom. Those who dominated the external world realized that true power was not in weapons, crowns, or thrones. True power was within in the gaze of someone who had awakened, and that gaze could not be controlled. So they began to seal this knowledge not to destroy it, but to bury it, to distort it, to turn vibrational truth into dogmatic belief. And so the erasure began. The phrase, "as above, so below," was emptied, turned into a mystical catchphrase. But those who live by this phrase know that it is a code. It reveals the hidden structure of reality. What is above, in the subtle world, is identical to what is below, in the material world. The outer is a reflection of the inner, and that is why everything you see on the outside can be transformed from within. This is true vision, a vision that depends not on the eyes, but on the state of consciousness. And this is exactly what they did not want you to know. Because if you understand that external reality is a direct reflection of what you vibrate, then no one can control you anymore. You do not need mediators. You become sovereign. And a sovereign being does not serve the interests of the system. This is why what was once freely shared among initiates began to be protected by symbols, metaphors, and layers of secrecy. The truth was encoded, disguised in myths, hidden in manuscripts, concealed under the cloak of institutionalized religion. And worst of all, what was once pure expansion became a threat. The Emerald Tablet, one of the most powerful texts ever written, ceased to be studied with the heart and began to be analyzed like a logical puzzle. But it was not meant to be understood by the common mind. It vibrates, it pulses, it activates. And when Thoth wrote in it that all is mind, he was not speaking of philosophy. He was speaking of structure, of origin, of how everything you call reality is, in essence, a thought in continuous vibration. That phrase alone is enough to break the illusion of separation. Because if the all is mind, and you are part of the all, then your mind plays an active role in creating reality. You are not a victim of what happens. You are a co-creator. But this awareness was torn from the center of humanity. And what was put in its place? Fixed beliefs, absolute truths, doctrines that limit instead of expand. The vision beyond the physical was not erased by accident. It was muffled so that you would settle for what you can see, touch, and measure. So that you would forget that matter is just the shell of something much deeper. Because when you see what is behind the form, everything changes. The rules stop working, the structures lose control, and the game ends. But this knowledge did not die. It only withdrew. And now, little by little, it is beginning to rise again. Not through institutions, but through you, through me, through all who are beginning to remember that there is something beyond the visible. And this remembering is not theoretical. It is vibrational. It arrives like a chill, like a presence silently watching you. And when that presence touches your perception, something inside shifts. A subtle shift that no one else sees, but you feel it, as if the air around you is getting denser, as if time is slowing down, as if for a moment you are between two worlds. This is the point where vision begins to open, not as a sudden flash or an extraordinary phenomenon, but as a subtle shift in the air. Something becomes different. You look at the same street, the same people, the same sky, but something no longer fits in the same way. It is as if the world begins to reveal its hidden layers. As if behind everything, there is another invisible layer that has always been there, waiting to be noticed. This moment does not shout, it whispers. And if you are paying attention, you will notice that it is a vibration that begins to pulse in the silence. An invisible, almost imperceptible field that surrounds all things. Suddenly, you feel the walls breathe. The trees listen to you. Time no longer flows the same way. This is not a hallucination. It is expanded perception. It is what Thoth called vision before form, feeling before understanding, presence before thought. Everything around you stays the same, but something inside you begins to change. The activation of consciousness does not happen because someone explains something to you. It happens when you feel in your body that you are present in something greater, and that presence is alive. It does not distract you, it moves through you. It is like a forgotten part of you is beginning to wake up from the inside, like the soul rising after a deep sleep. This is the beginning of alignment with the vibrational field. But that can only happen when you pause. When the external noise gives way to internal silence, because it is in silence that the invisible moves. And so now I will guide you through a simple but extremely powerful exercise. You do not need to close your eyes. Just pause for a moment. Take a deep, conscious breath. Feel the air coming in. Feel the air going out. Do not try to control anything. Just observe. Observe the breath as if it were a gentle wave moving through you. Now notice that this simple act has already taken you to another place. A place where time slows down, where thoughts do not rule, a place of presence. Stay there, even as you hear my voice. You are now in contact with the vibrational field. It has no form. It does not need to prove its existence. But you feel it. And as you feel it, you begin to see with different eyes. The eyes of the soul. Because only the soul can recognize what the ordinary senses cannot reach. And when that happens, everything begins to respond. The eye that sees through time, the portal, is within you. When you enter this state of vibrational presence, you are not just more aware, you are beginning to touch a forgotten point within yourself, a point that belongs neither to the body nor to time. It is a silent, yet pulsing core, a place from which everything is born, including your perception of reality. Thoth called this the hidden eye, a center of vision that does not depend on light or form. It is within you, but it does not work like the other senses. It does not observe objects. It pierces through layers. It sees not what is in front of you, but what is behind. It does not analyze, it recognizes. This is the eye that sees through time. Today, many know this point as the pineal gland, a small structure in the center of the brain, surrounded by mystery and the subject of scientific and philosophical debate. But long before science even knew of its existence, the initiates already knew. They did not call it a gland, they called it a portal. A portal between worlds, a point of intersection between the physical and the subtle, between the now and the eternal. But this portal does not open with formulas or magic techniques. It responds to a single movement, the vibrational state of your consciousness. The more noise, the more it closes. The more presence, the more it awakens. And here is the detail that almost no one understands. It is not force that activates this eye. It is silence. When you breathe with attention, when you feel the air coming in and going out without trying to control it, when you simply observe the present without judgment, without expectation, without desire, something begins to shift. A vibration moves from the base of your body to the crown of your head. It is subtle but real. Like a gentle wave that passes through you and, as it passes, seems to clear away a veil. You do not see images, you perceive connections. You do not understand through logic. You recognize through presence. This is the beginning of activation, not because you did something, but because you stopped resisting. The hidden eye was not made to show you external miracles. It was made to dissolve time, because time as you know it is a mental construct. And when that construct weakens, something extraordinary happens. You begin to remember not with the mind, but with the body, with the soul, with a vibration that reconnects you to dimensions that have always been here, but were invisible to ordinary perception. This kind of vision does not come from the outside. It is born from within and projects light onto everything around you. You begin to notice patterns, synchronicities, symbols that once seemed random. Things begin to communicate with you, not with words, but with presence. a book falling from a shelf, a repeating number, a song playing at the perfect moment. The universe begins to respond to you because you stopped shouting and started listening. And here is something fundamental. What activates this eye is not effort, it is alignment. When you are in vibrational coherence with your inner truth, this center awakens naturally. And the awakening is not an event. It is a process. It begins with small perceptions. It grows with trust and deepens with surrender. And when it opens, even for a few moments, you understand that you are no longer limited to your body. And in that feeling, your consciousness touches a subtle frontier, an almost imperceptible line that separates what you call me from the rest of existence. Except when you cross that line, you realize it never really existed. It was a mental illusion, a structure created to protect something that never needed protection, your essence. And it is in this moment, when presence is so deep that time seems to dissolve, that something begins to happen. The body remains still, but you feel that you are somewhere else. Thoth called this the double nature, the physical body and the subtle vehicle, a consciousness that can move beyond matter without needing the body to follow. This is not a modern idea. It is not a new concept. It is ancient knowledge preserved in the deepest traditions of Egypt, of India, of the Star Peoples. Thousands of accounts have crossed the centuries, describing this same experience. The body rests, but the being remains awake, moves, observes, crosses layers of reality that once seemed unreachable. This phenomenon is not daydreaming. It is not a delusion. It is the beginning of the journey beyond matter. It is when you begin to realize that your consciousness is not locked inside your skull. It is much larger, much freer, and it knows where to go. During sleep, most people shut down. But some, even with the body asleep, keep their awareness alive. And it is in this state of subtle wakefulness that lucid dreams begin to happen. Conscious projections, deep dives into planes where time flows differently. In these experiences, space does not behave as it does here. Objects do not follow the usual physical laws. And you understand intuitively that you are not in a dream. You are in another kind of reality. A reality that pulses, that communicates, that teaches. The place where reality begins. The vibrational field of creation. You realize you are not just in another place. You are inside a living, vibrant, intelligent structure. A kind of field that responds to your consciousness even before you form a thought. Everything there pulses. Everything moves according to your vibration. And that is when you understand with your whole being what Thoth tried to teach humanity for millennia. Everything begins before form. Nothing you see in the physical world originates here. The origin is in the invisible, in the vibrational field of creation. This field is not a metaphor. It exists, and you have already been in it thousands of times, even without realizing it. When you feel that something is about to happen, when you visualize with such force that reality seems to bend, when a thought comes with such intense emotion that something around you shifts, you are accessing this field. Thoth called it the matrix, not in the digital sense, but as a cosmic womb, a space of pure potential where everything is vibration in its purest state before it condenses into matter. In this field, time does not work as it does here. What you feel, you project. What you believe, you manifest. What you resist, intensifies. That is why it is neutral. It does not judge. It simply reflects. And when your consciousness is awake, you interact with it actively. You shape, you influence, you create. Thoth knew that this was the true spiritual technology. Not an external technique, but a state of inner alignment. Because when a human being thinks, they are not just thinking, they are vibrating. And the universe responds to vibration, not to surface-level intention. That is why the ancients said, to think is to create, but not in the mental sensing, the vibrational sense. Thinking with the body, feeling with the consciousness, aligning thought, emotion, and frequency until the field responds. And it does respond. You have already noticed this. When you are in sync with something, doors open, the right people appear, ideas flow. It seems like a coincidence, but it is not. It is vibration in action. The field of creation, recognizing your frequency and manifesting what you already are inside, but few access this consciously. Most live trapped in automatic thoughts, reactive emotions, and inherited beliefs, and all of that creates too, but it creates unconsciously. It creates chaos. It creates repetition. It creates stagnation. That is why Thoth said, "Know thyself, and thou shalt know the universe." Because by knowing your vibration, you begin to operate directly within the field that shapes everything. And this is not just a spiritualized idea. Today, even science is beginning to admit what Thoth taught thousands of years ago. Modern physics, even while trying to maintain a materialistic narrative, has started to find traces of the invisible. Not because it wanted to, but because the data began to force it. The behavior of subatomic particles does not follow the rules of traditional logic. They behave in strange, unpredictable ways until someone observes. The famous double-slit experiment showed this. When no one observes, the particle behaves like a wave. When someone observes, it changes. It becomes a particle. In other words, reality changes when consciousness enters the scene. The simple act of observing changes the behavior of matter. And this shook the foundations of traditional science, because if consciousness affects the result, then it is part of the equation. And if consciousness is present, then the universe is no longer a blind machine. It is a living, responsive, intelligent field, exactly as Thoth said. But it does not stop there. Quantum entanglement shows that two particles can communicate instantly, even when separated by vast distances. If one changes, the other responds, as if there were an invisible connection between them. And this is not theory. It is measured. It is documented. It reveals that there is something beyond space, a link that connects everything. A field that is non-local, that respects neither time nor distance. A field that vibrates like a single organism. The code that unlocks your inner vision. Thoth never wanted you to believe in words. He always pointed toward a state, an inner place where truth reveals itself effortlessly, without reasoning. And it is exactly here that you begin to access the central code he left behind. But pay attention. This code is not hidden in secret symbols or lost formulas. It is too simple to be complicated, yet too deep to be superficial. This code is vibrational. It happens when you combine three things: silence, attention, and subtle perception. It seems simple, but it requires a kind of presence that few people can maintain. The silence that Thoth taught was not just the absence of sound. It was an inner space where the mind surrenders, where the chatter of thoughts loses its strength, and something finer arises, something that listens without judgment, that observes without interference. Attention is the second pillar, not forced attention that tires you out, but living attention, the kind of presence you feel when you are in front of something sacred, even if you do not understand why. It is when you look at something ordinary and realize it is filled with meaning because you have stopped looking with your eyes and started seeing with your being. And subtle perception is the third point. It is listening beyond sound, feeling beyond touch, a knowing that did not come through logic but landed in the soul like a scent that no one sees, yet it changes the whole room. When these three elements align, something inside you lights up. A center that was dormant awakens, and you begin to see the world from within it. This is true inner vision. It is not an image. It is a state, a kind of vibration where the separation between you and what exists disappears. Everything begins to respond differently. Life listens to you. The signs multiply. The answers come before the questions. You are no longer searching, you are recognizing. That is why this code cannot be taught in words. It must be activated through direct experience. And if you have come this far, you have already begun to feel it. Because it is no longer a theory. It is real. It is happening now. Your mind is open. Your body is present. And your field is vibrating at a different frequency. And once that frequency stabilizes, there is no going back. You have already crossed the veil. The sensation is subtle but undeniable. You no longer look at things the same way. Words carry more weight. Encounters gain new depth. Places emit signals. And you feel as if something broke inside you, but not in the sense of damage. It was a shell that fell away, a structure that once protected you but also limited you. After that, you can no longer fit into the same stories. You cannot be distracted by what used to distract you. The surface no longer satisfies you because now you have touched the origin. You have realized that everything is vibration. Everything is consciousness. Everything is a reflection of who you are. And that changes everything. But here comes the most important part. Seeing beyond the physical world is just the beginning. Because the real work starts now. The challenge is no longer to perceive. It is to live with that perception. It is to bring the invisible into daily life. It is to act from consciousness, even when everything pulls you back to autopilot. Thoth always warned about this. Awakening is a portal, but it is not the final destination. It is a call to a new way of existing. A way where you do not react, you choose. Where you do not depend, you create. Where you do not follow the external flow, you vibrate a new field around you. And it is in this new field that your reality begins to reorganize. The same situations arise, but your response changes. The same people appear, but you see them with different eyes. Life goes on, but the one living it is no longer the same. Because now you understand that you are here to remember, to create, to expand, and to live with presence. And the good news is you are not alone. There are paths, practices, guides, and experiences that can take you even deeper. This was just the beginning. But now you already have the foundation. You already feel the vibration. You have already accessed the soul's point of return.